Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. Today I'm going to be talking about the brand new, just announced Figma to Wix Studio plugin. I know this was long awaited. There was like kind of a version of this for Editor X, but this is the first version that's available for Wix Studio. So we're going to be exploring this, showing also the practical steps for how to actually utilize the plugin and also try to push it to the limits and see what it actually is and is not capable of. So if you want to learn all that and more, let's get started. So before we hop in and start converting things from Figma to Wix Studio and going crazy, let me talk a bit about what I have open here for this demo. So first of all, I have this guide, and this is going to be very important because while I do hope that the plugin is rather straightforward, because that's kind of the point of a plugin, there are understandably some caveats and some best practices for how to prepare your designs in Figma, etc., before converting them over to Wix, and we'll want to have access to that in order to assess this tool fairly. In addition, I also have a few Figma designs that I just opened from some landing page of Figma. So these are designs that were designed by people in the community. I would love to attribute them in some way. I don't see anything here now that I have the design open. This is called MNTN landing page. You can go and look it up, and it's just a very basic landing page. So this will be one of the first things that I'll want to assess because I think this is like a pretty standard use case for this plugin. And then I've also opened up a few designs which are a lot more challenging, and I pretty much know that they're going to break the plugin, but I do want to try them anyways just to really see what happens and try and stretch it to the limit. So I have here this kind of dashboard looking design or table design, and there are a few nonsensical things here because I mean, the point of this is not to be something that would be converted directly into a website, but just to give an idea of a dashboard. And there are like some diagonal elements here and just a lot of things that are not going to convert well for sure. But I do want to just see what happens if you tried to convert something like this using the plugin. And I also have something else, which is more of like a mock-up for a drop down, like a date picker drop down or something like that. And I'm just curious also how Wix would approach this as well. In addition to these designs that I have open, I also have a blank Wix Studio website, and this is what I'm going to be using along with the plugin and see what happens. So I'm ready to do our first attempt at using this plugin, and there's two ways you can approach this. So either you can find the plugin page on Figma itself and then kind of open it in a specific Figma file. You could also find the plugin from within a specific Figma file. So if you go here, for example, to this landing page, which is the first one I'm going to attempt, and then we can just go here into the menu up here on top, and then look down here for plugins. And once we find plugins, I'm going to go here to manage plugins, and then we can search for, let's say, Wix Studio and find that plugin. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and run it here within my Figma design. Okay, so export your Figma designs to Wix Studio. Get started. Connect this file to Wix Studio. So we're going to copy, there's instructions here, so I'm going to copy the Figma URL, and on a Wix Studio site, paste the link under Tools, Import from Figma. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, I'm copying the URL, and I'm going to head back to my Wix Studio site, and then I'm going to go here into the menu, Tools, and here we have it, Import from Figma. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to paste the URL that I just copied right over here, and I'm going to go ahead and click this connect button. And now I'm expecting cool things to happen. Okay, so Wix Studio wants access to my Figma account, whatever. Read files, read and modify, read, a lot of read, which is good. So it doesn't sound too intrusive. They want my name, email, and profile image as well for some reason. Your Figma file, the Figma file was connected successfully. You can start exporting styles and frames with Figma. to Wix Studio plugin. So let's just hop in for a second into the guide to understand what styles are and frames are, because things are starting to get a little more complicated. So here I am inside of this guide again, and first of all we have a tip here. So to achieve a one-for-one result when exporting frames from Figma to Studio, we recommend that you start by matching the width of the Figma frame to the editing size on Studio. If you choose not to, your designs won't be the same ratio, instead they'll scale up or down. So I'm kind of curious to see actually what happens if you don't follow this tip, but that's just one thing to note as we do this conversion. And here we have a little bit more of an explanation of what was kind of mentioned before in terms of exporting styles, exporting frames. So exporting styles, this is the recommended first step to transfer your designs. By exporting, so this is, okay, typography and colors to Wix Studio. So Wix Studio is familiar with all of that. And if we don't do that, then elements imported to Studio will be styled with defaults. I'm kind of curious to try like everything to see like what happens if you do this, what happens if you do this. I don't know if we have time for everything, but yeah, I'm really curious to play around and see what happens if you follow their guidelines, if you don't follow their guidelines. Export frame, if you choose to export a frame without first exporting styles, you will need to manually update these design elements in Studio to get the look you desire. Okay. I'm not going to talk about this right now because this looks a little more complicated and probably less common. So let's head back to our Figma file and continue with this plugin conversion process. So I've finished with the connection. You can see that, sorry, I'm here in Figma, but if I go here to Wix Studio, then you can see here that the Figma file is showing in some manner here. There's not much that I can do with it, so I'm guessing that the next stuff that I have to do is inside of Figma itself. So here back in Figma, I'm just going to go, I'm done connecting my data, and then click Next. Okay, so match editing size to frame width to maintain consistent sizing. This is what we read before, essentially. So the top level frame width should be the same size as the page editing size on desktop. So I think that this, if I select this frame here, then I go over here, that this would be the width that they're talking about. Again, I'm not a very avid Figma user, and that's why I have awesome designers on my team that know how to do this stuff. And so this might be wrong. If you think it's wrong, let me know in the comments. But I guess we'll figure that out depending on the result. So I'm just going to grab this width right over here, and I'm going to head back to my Wix Studio site. And I'm going to change the width here, the editing size, okay? So this isn't actually changing the size of the breakpoint per se, it's just changing the editing size, okay, right over here. And I'm pretty sure that's the instructions that we had. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click apply. Okay, so now I have a really wide editing size. And I'm gonna go back to Figma. Yeah, so it looks kind of the same as what I had there. So as long as I copied the right one here from Figma, then we should be good. And now that I've done that, I'm going to start export. So first thing they recommended, first step to export styles. I'm going to go with the recommendation. So I'm going to click export styles. So here, I don't see many I don't see many styles here. So there's one color and there's no typography. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, so I see here that on the side, I'm currently selecting BG Hero. And it could be like I'm not selecting something that's, a high enough level to get the typography, to get the styles, sorry. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to try selecting like this entire frame, I think it's called. So this entire page, essentially, all of the elements under it. And then I'm going to click Export Styles again. And I see that I'm still in the same situation. Hmm. Yeah. Let me just try just the header. No. Okay, so I'm going to attribute this to the setup of this Figma file. I didn't design this Figma file myself. So, and I'm not even sure I would know how to do this in Figma, but I'm going to attribute this, what's happening here, to the fact that maybe something isn't set up in like a very standard way here with this template here in Figma. So I'm not going to blame Wix. I'm either going to blame myself for not selecting the right thing, or the setup of this particular template. I'm very super curious to hear about your experiences trying this out with templates that you did, or if you're a Figma user, like where I should be looking for this stuff inside of Figma to get it right. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to export the styles as R, and the styles are exported. Okay, so I got this confirmation here on the bottom. And now I'm going to go to the next part, which is really the whole, should be the name of the game here, exporting the frames essentially. So let me go ahead and try that out. Frame width, okay, so I was right about the frame width. Okay, maybe I should start using Figma. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click export frame. Now it's telling me to go to Wix Studio to import the frame. So I'm going to go back here into Wix Studio. Let's see, no. Importing from Figma. Okay. So all I see here now at the moment um, is this kind of gradient, which doesn't feel so right to me. It's not feeling great to me. So let me go ahead and see. Maybe I'm like I feel like I'm either selecting something wrong, or this is like I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. Let me try selecting everything, export frame. It still looks kind of the same. Okay, there I selected something else, and it changed here. Yeah, so when I select individual things, it does seem to be selecting, but for some reason, when I select like the top layer, I would expect that oh, there we go. I got it. Yay. Okay, so I guess I didn't do something wrong. I did something off before, but essentially we want to select this top layer here. I'm curious now if that's why my styles didn't work as well. Let me see. Oh, there they all are. Okay, so I apologize to the person who designed this template for even suggesting that they might have done something wrong. I'm pretty sure that I did click this before over here. I I don't know why it didn't work. Maybe there was like, I don't know, a bug, or I didn't click hard enough, or I don't know what. But yes, selecting the top level then should do it. So I'm going to do this export styles again. And I'm going to go back, export frame. I see everything here now in my frame. It looks nice. I'm going to go ahead and export frame. And now I'm going to go to Wix Studio to import the frame again. So I'm going here to Wix Studio. I'm going to refresh the import. No need to edit the URL, I think, like I did before. I think that was just, I don't know why I did that. Um, there we go. Okay, so we have a frame. 4 fonts are missing. I guess these fonts maybe don't exist inside of Wix at the moment, so I would need to upload those if I wanted them to be supported for my design. That makes total sense. And the design here overall is looking good. So I am going to, and I'm going to add this frame here. I have the choice here. I have to add it as a page, a section, a container. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this as a page. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add to Site. And now it is adding. Okay, so the conversion, the import is done. And just to give you an idea of how long that took, it was about 2 minutes. I mean, a little less even, which is pretty quick, not too bad. Let's close all this up, and I really want to take a look at what is going on here in this import. Okay, so I'm going to change this zoom up here to like 70%. Uh, yeah. I'm I was really hoping that it was going to be better. Um, I yeah, I was really rooting for the plugin. I was honestly, like it does not please me at all to be in this situation. But yeah, so let me just go through what I'm not pleased about, what it did do, what it didn't do. Um, I'll start with I'll start with something positive that this part actually came out a lot better than I was even expecting. Okay, this I thought it would completely go haywire with. So let's just start off at a positive note. On the other hand, okay, so like these text elements, like all the text is kind of bleeding, it's all wrapping. For some reason, like the text here is kind of cut off on the bottom, and that seems to be something that's happening a lot. Especially, yeah, like there seems to be a lot of text bleeding. The super awesome like background images and like the gradient and all that stuff does not seem to have imported. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like bleeding and like I'm not sure how much time this would actually save me, like designing this on Wix. Um, Considering like just the fact that like when you design something directly in Wix Studio, you're able to build the logic of the relationship between elements in a top-down manner and really be in full control. Whereas here, to some extent, it just takes everything and puts it out. And I mean, there are some relationships. These are stacked to some extent. I mean, let's see how this would look on like some of the smaller breakpoints. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could run the the responsiveness AI and get it to fix it up for other breakpoints. Yeah, and it's nice, I guess, that you have all the elements. Like these, if I was building this myself, these wouldn't all be anchored here just at the top. I mean, these would be stacked or in a container. So I I'm not blown away. Um, I think it's yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'm not. I'll add the asterisks of maybe I did something wrong. I will add also that it's worth reading all of these explanations um, in terms of what elements it supports. So let's go just down over here. So the plugin automatically identifies the following. So page, section, stack, container, images, button, text, GIF, and SVG. Um, I don't know if all of these are elements that you can add in Figma or if you have to design them in a specific way. Like, for example, they have some instructions here about buttons. So design buttons in Figma, import to Studio as button components if they have text only. Currently, okay, to appear as a button on your new site, your design should look like this. A symbol frame with one text element and a fill color. So like there are very specific instructions for how something needs to be designed in order for it to work well with the plugin. So that means that if you're like me and you just go ahead and you find something random that you kind of like on Figma and you try to import it, your success might be minimal. And that's just because it wasn't designed with Wix Studio in mind. And this makes sense to some extent, but it's also, yeah, like I don't know if people are really designing with Studio in mind. Maybe that's like something people will start doing. Um, yeah, like I would have expected, let's say, I mean, something like this, scroll down, I mean, that should have been like a button. Um, I guess it's not designed based on those guidelines of how a button component should be designed. Who knows, maybe I picked something that's rather tough here for the, yeah, I'm just looking at like the text is just all like here you see how the text is like nicely designed, it's behind, it's faded out. If we take a look here, it's just kind of plopped on. Um, okay, let's move on to the more challenging things, even though we didn't really pass this kind of like first level thing that I was hoping would actually go really well. Um, but let's try one of the other things. Okay, so let's try this really crazy data table. And I mean, my expectations are starting like super low. Okay, like if anything happens, I'll be happy. So let's go ahead. Let's go through the steps again. So if anything, it'll be good practice. So we go ahead. We want to find plugins. Figma to Wix Studio. It's already saved there. Awesome. Setup, export, and now we want to connect the file. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go to the same studio site, and it should probably just add it as another page. So I'm going to go ahead, import from Figma. Whoops. Did I just disconnect it? Okay, that's a little weird. That's not the kind of the expected behavior yeah, it's not exactly what I was expecting. But I'm going to edit the Figma file. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this new URL. I'm going to click connect. And let's go ahead back to our Figma design. I'm done connecting the file. We're going to want to match the editing size to the frame width. So I'm going to grab this. Here it's now 1400. And I'm going to go to Wix Studio and I'm going to change that over here. Awesome. And I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to start the export. Start with the styles. So select the frame. I think I have the top. Yeah, okay, good. So here we have all the colors. I'm getting better at this slowly. Export the styles. And awesome, styles are exported, I guess. And we're going to export the frames. It shows that I have everything here selected that I expect. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to export the frame. And I'm going to go back into Wix Studio. And I'm going to refresh the import. And one font is missing, okay, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add it to site as a new page, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add to site, and again, this will probably take a few minutes, maybe even longer, because it's super complex, and I will be back when it's done. Okay, so we are back, and this time it took a little longer, so this time it took about, I want to say about 4 or 5 minutes, and it kind of makes sense because this design is a lot more complex, in my opinion. And it also like really, like my computer has a big fever now. And I had to close my recording stuff and like it was very intensive. Like I could feel my laptop sweating as it was doing this conversion, but that's fine. I mean, that's fine. And let's take a look. I mean, at a first glance, I actually have to say that I find this one almost more impressive than, yeah, just flat out more impressive than the previous one. I did not think it was going to be this good. Obviously, nothing here is very functional. This one, which is like a little bit tilted inside of the original, is straight here. We have this, which is kind of like overlapping over here. I'm curious if this, yeah, so this converted as a button. So like this is styled based on the guidelines, I guess, in Figma. So this is a button element in Wix, which is awesome. This, on the other hand, is not an input, and it does explicitly say that inside of the guidelines that inputs are not one of the things that can be converted. Where did it say that? It said it somewhere here. Okay, so let me just take a look here. Where did it say what cannot be identifies? Okay, the plugin does not auto-recognize menus, forms, galleries, videos, and input elements. So this is kind of important because I mean, videos I understand because it could be very hard to discern what's a video, what's an image. Galleries, I also understand, like how do you choose which gallery based on how the images are organized. Forms is also like its own app in Wix, fine. Menus, I'll give it to them. I think inputs though is something that I would expect from a plugin like this because it's just so I feel like it's a very common use case for something like this. Like you're building out a custom form or a custom experience and you want to import it. If you can't import those inputs, I don't know. I feel like that is something that I do expect. Maybe it's on some kind of roadmap. Like all these other ones, like I can understand or forgive. But inputs is something that I would want to see from a plugin like this personally. So that's just one thing to note here. So yeah, you'd have to like replace something like this with an input. But this, I mean, this one, like this came out pretty beautiful, I have to say. Again, like these are not actually, it can't really be used, but it is nice. It is nice and it looks like the one in Figma. And I mean, this is something that would take me some time to design. But it also highlights a conceptual flaw and also introduces a lot of philosophical questions, which I'm going to get into. Because if I was designing something like this inside of Wix Studio, I mean, this would obviously be a repeater. I would not just stack containers one on top of the other because this is populated by data, and I don't know how much data I'm going to have, and it's a repetitive design. Like this is going to be a repeater, but if I copy it over from Figma like that using the plugin, it doesn't really know that that's a repeater. So maybe like it would have been useful just to copy over parts of like just the elements themselves. So maybe designing elements inside of Figma and then importing those elements into Wix Studio. Um, it's definitely better to have the plugin than to not have it. I'm not complaining that we have it. I'm just really trying to think if this is a tool that is going to be useful and used a lot. So let me try and explain, and I'm gonna skip the last one because I think these two really gave a good general idea of what is possible and what's not possible at the moment. So I have a few open-ended questions just for discussion, really. So like, please put your opinions in the comments below. So one is considering the fact that in order to get this to work properly, you likely have to design the Figma file with Wix in mind. So you won't be able to just go around and grab random Figma files and import them to Wix Studio. You're going to have to do Wix-oriented Figma design. With that in mind, how beneficial is it to first design in Figma versus just designing directly into Wix Studio? Because Wix Studio, I mean, it's also a drag and drop editor. Some things can maybe be a little more clunky than Figma. Figma might have a little more ease of use in some aspects, but are you saving more time by designing in Figma with Wix in mind and then converting with a plugin and then readjusting everything to Wix Studio? Or are you actually saving time if you design directly in Wix Studio, even if you design it only as a mockup? So like, you want to give some concept art to the client. Do you do that in Figma or do you do that just like quickly get something together on a Wix page, show it to them, and then make any necessary adjustments? I don't have an answer to that. I know that we usually tend to design directly within the editors, but that's also because we're not usually doing very design heavy things. And we focus on like functionality and customizing and stuff like that. But we do design, and when we do, we tend to start inside the editor, maybe because this plugin didn't exist yet, but these are just some thoughts that I'm having. So that's kind of one of my questions that I have. And if your answer to that question is yes, it is worthwhile to design in Figma first, and this plugin definitely helps. So I'm curious to hear how you plan on incorporating this into your workflow and how you plan on dealing with some of the challenges that we saw here. So are you going to build your Figma designs in a more Wix-oriented way based on the guidelines that they provided? Will you only be designing specific things in Figma? Will you take like a component approach like I just explained with the second one? I'm really curious to hear what people are planning on doing. I mean, it's a new tool, so the sky's the limit and everything is open at the moment. But yeah, I'm mostly creating this video to introduce the tool and to create that discussion. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please don't forget to give it a like. If you want to see videos about Wix every week, teaching you how to kind of take Wix to the next level and do things a little out of the box, then I do recommend subscribing to the channel, and I will see you next time.